Hi guys, gonna quickly run you through my build I've been using as a solo Psyker and also for group play. It basically clears like 200 to 300 solo, probably can go further, but it's really not that fun to play solo because you basically teleport into melee range with the ability from the sword and then just channel Maelstrom, and if you get enemies that walk backwards with some salvo ability with guns or flamers, they walk backwards, they just basically kite you and you have to then move over to them and start the channel again, and there's like a bit of a global cooldown between it, so it's pretty clunky. It's not really great for solo play. For like hunts and assassination it's fantastic, but like purge kind of missions it's really not worth using. But for co-op it's great, like for just zoning out a target or just heading straight for a portal in the war zones, or straight to a boss or an elite of some sort, or into a huge group of enemies. You can just wipe them out. So we're going to be using warp heat diffusion to get -1 warp heat each time you create a debuff. I'm going to be stacking a ton of debuffs on targets. Psychic boon just to keep the buffs up for as long as possible, because basically I'm just casting all the buffs on myself and then I'll be jumping in with the teleport and just channeling. And that's basically the gameplay. It's really easy gameplay as well. Diversive tactics. You lose damage because we're only using one damage type. We're not cycling through different damage types like the AoE Psyker, but because we're not really concerned or focused on damage, even though it does an insane amount of damage, that we don't care about the damage loss. We're here to stack the vulnerabilities for the other Psykers or the other damage dealers in the group. Force, we don't go for the damage percentages or any kind of milestones on this because we're not interested in damage. Again, we're just for survivability. That's why we've gone for resilience as much as possible to get the extra HP and warp resists. The extra suppression on hit and movement speed's nice. Psi focus, I like the -10% warp heat cost to skills, because man, channeling Maelstrom generates an insane amount of heat. Like it really, your heat meter just bounces up and down from like 0 to half to full straight away, just about, especially if you're not hitting many targets. We have the damage reduction for 5 seconds for each point of warp heat gained. We're gaining a ton of warp heat. Like it's massive. Like it's not constant high heat, it's a constant fluctuation of up and down and up and down and up and down, because your skills are basically, when you debuff a target, it reduces heat, and so it's kind of like while you're generating, you're also reducing heat, so it's fun to play. But you basically use the Ether Blade and use this skill here, the Ether Strike, to get to where you need to be by targeting enemies and getting into that good position without having to like get body blocked and walk in between them. You've got the Warp Rod with a 10% damage debuff on target. And that's basically what you need for gear. It doesn't really matter too much about stats. You just want as much damage reduction and HP. This is a really good role you can get, damage reduce while using channeled skills, because that's what you're doing the 90% of the time. Skills, we've got psychic debuffs. I've took armor piercing and vulnerability just to stack a debuff. Crits, we've gone for feeding on pain, -1 warp heat for every critical hit. As I said before, you're generating a ton of heat. And we've got Berserker Rage, that critical hit heals the caster for 1% of max HP. You've got your usual cerebral feedbacks, the critical hits reduce cooldowns by 10%, then just cooldowns. Suppression, they were just leftover points, so I just chucked them in there for damage reduction. We're basically really maxed out on suppression as long as we're in combat. Debuffs, we've got Demoralize, targets suffer 3% extra damage penalty for every stacked vulnerability bestowed on them. It just stacks vulnerability like per second like that because of the channeled skill. Then you've got -1 warp heat for every debuff effect on the target, just to keep that warp heat down. Even though you want to be generating a lot of warp heat to keep healing yourself, but you also don't want to hit max warp heat so that you're generating all the anomalies and actually killing yourself. We've then just got shock debuff, which we're not too fussed about, but it's the 3% critical hit chance for every debuff. This just means, again, like the AoE Psyker, I don't need to spec into crit, and I'll be critting an insane amount because of the amount of debuffs. Support, we've got every point of warp heat gained heals you for 0.5% of your maximum HP. Again, it generates an insane amount of heat, So this is healing me while I'm channeling this ability, while also applying debuffs, which is then reducing the heat, and then the crits, because of the debuffs, are then reducing the heat. So it's a huge cycle of just generating heat, reducing heat, and it giving you all these heals and crit bonuses. We then go into hit points and just basically get as much in there as we can because we're playing a tank. We haven't gone for all of these because there's much more, like, just basically better perks we can pick up from the defense tree, like this, invulnerable for 3 seconds when the character status changed to exposed. That procs pretty decently when you're going from area to area and just teleporting onto the mobs and like getting that alerted exposed status. We've then got 25% damage reduction added to deflect. We've got 20% damage reduction increased by the armor here, an extra 2% damage reduction there, and this skill is really useful. It's a little hidden gem here. 100% bonus to deflect with 4 swords. We've got the 4 sword right here, so it adds that extra deflect. It's a cool class to play. Like, the whole build is really fun, just the whole teleporting in and just becoming some sort of warp electrical conduit channeling tank basically. And yeah, that's the build. I just want you to I don't want to have too long a video, so I'm just going to stick a little few clips in to see what the gameplay is like. It's basically a 2-button build. I'll quickly go through the skills right now actually, so people know what they are. Forget that the Psyker has these. You want on your back bar, beam's just there for, I was showing a beam thing earlier, just completely ignore beam, we'll just take it off. You just want to use Death Augury and Endurance on your back bar, and then on your main bar you have precog dodge, and then Fiery Form. Don't even use Fiery Form either, just that's when I'm playing solo. I can change my armor and have the extra skills so I can just run through everything Fiery Form. And then just Maelstrom. So you've got your Warp Blast here, don't use that. You just want to use button 1 for Ether Strike and then button 2 to channel, and that's basically it. You'll see how simple the gameplay is from the video. Yep, let me know what you think about this. Are you going to consider playing a Psyker? Maybe play the tank build instead of the beam build or the AoE Psyker build. It's just something else to play, isn't it? It's fantastic. I really enjoy it. It's good for playing solo for the hunts again, like I said. But most of all, it's really good for being a res bot when you're playing high level war zones. If you're finding out your group's starting to wipe or your friends are dying, then you can always just go in there as the tank and then just pop the time warp. Even if time warp gets fixed and it does reduce the duration while you're channeling a spell, just use it as a basic safe spot on the map. So say your friend dies here, you can just run over, pop time stop and revive him and then get out of it, and it's basically you're not going to die while getting that revive bit. So yeah, that's a build, guys. Let me know if you're going to try it out, what you think about it, and if you've got any suggestions or would like to know anything else, just hit me up with a message or a comment. Appreciate a like and a subscribe. So let me know what you're thinking. Method out.